Well, welcome back to another episode of the Sky Society podcast. Today, I am so excited to be talking to Taylor Berringer. She is the Senior Manager of Influencer Marketing at Urban Outfitters. Welcome, Taylor.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Taylor is an expert in influencer marketing. We're going to go into all the different roles that she's had and how she got to where she is now, but she's done quite a bit in this space. So I'm very excited to pick your brain, hear how you got to Urban Outfitters and just kind of what you learned along the way. But before we jump into all of that fun stuff, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So again, my name is Taylor. I currently live in Philadelphia. And as Natalie mentioned, I oversee influencer marketing at Urban Outfitters. So I've been here for a little bit under a year, and my role really encompasses everything from paid partnerships to gifting to experiential to ambassador programs. We work very closely with the social and paid social teams. So I would say we really do a lot and we're trying to achieve a lot. So yeah, it's been great so far. And other than that, I have three cats who I love dearly,
Oh,
love living in Philly, love going out to eat, all the different restaurants. This is such a great foodie city. So it's a little bit about me.
any food recommendations for someone visiting Philly?
Oh my gosh. I live near a strip where there are so many just amazing restaurants. I feel like every time I go to a new restaurant, it becomes my new favorite restaurant. But I would say there is a tapas spot near my house called Barcelona, which is always amazing. They have a
Mm.
full wine selection if you're into that. Also, a lot of really great Mexican spots if you're into that. But truly, like there's something for everybody here.
All right, I have never been to Philly, but I've heard amazing things, and I love a city with good food. I don't think you can ask for anything more than that.
Yes, it's perfect. I love living here.
Have you lived there your whole life, or did you recently move there?
I have been living in Philadelphia for the past, I want to say 4 or 5 years. I grew up in PA, about an hour and a half away. I think my town's claim to fame is that it's actually where Taylor Swift grew up before she moved to
Oh
Nashville.
my
That's
gosh.
really exciting. Yeah, so she grew up like down the street from me. And then I did go to college about 30 minutes away from Philly, but I have also lived in Orlando and I've also lived in LA for a little bit.
Wow, so you've been a little bit all over.
Mhm.
Have you ever run into Taylor Swift in your hometown?
I have not, but she's a little bit older than me, but I did go to school with a few people who knew her or like she was babysitting them or like friends
Oh
of
my
their
gosh.
so they have pictures of her when they were like really little.
It's so funny that celebrities had lives before they were
I
celebrities.
know, I
Things
know.
like
It's so crazy to think about.
yes. Yes. Wow. Very interesting. Okay, Taylor. So I want to go a little bit, we'll rewind a little bit, and I want to talk about how you started influencer marketing. So you had your degree in communications. I talked to a lot of women that have a communications degree, and it's great because it gives you so many different opportunities of where you could go next, but also it can be very overwhelming with the number of things you can do with a communications degree because there's a lot. So how did you decide that you wanted to go into influencer marketing?
Yeah, so I had a bit of an untraditional start in influencer marketing, but there were definitely adjacencies. When I graduated college, I immediately moved to Philadelphia. And the one thing about Philadelphia is if you want to work in a creative industry, which I did, you are going to go to New York. Philly does have a creative hub, but there aren't that many companies actually in the city that are like these larger brands or tech platforms.
Mm.
So to get my foot in the corporate work environment, I was just applying for a lot of different positions pertaining to social media because at the time that I graduated, social media and influencer marketing were still kind of building up their own industry. So you weren't seeing as many in-house positions for influencers specifically. So social for me was kind of the most realistic route. And that didn't end up panning out. I did apply to a lot of sales jobs. That didn't pan out either. So I ended up working at Lovely Bride, which is a boutique bridal company, but it's really cool because I do believe that they are the pioneers of non-traditional bridal. So they have a lot of like boho indie designers. It's a franchise business, but because they were so focused on their social presence and having like this really great aesthetic, they also had local social accounts in addition to their national. So I got a job at Lovely Bride working as a sales associate, but I also kind of talked my way into running the social account for the Philly location. So I got a lot of experience there. It was a very small team. I think there were like four of us plus the founder. So I was really on the ground every single day, capturing content of the brides coming in with their dresses. We also would have influencers come in and do like a little like modeling shoot. So I was capturing content for that. And then for the national social, we would have like, I would say bridal showcases once a year, and we would bring in a lot of models, and I was capturing content for that as well. And so that was living not only on social, but it could also live on web and email. And that was really just how I started to grow my portfolio. Again, very non-traditional, but after about a year at Lovely, I just made the decision that I need to move to a bigger city that has a bigger industry for creative fields, which took me to LA. And that was a really big risk for me because I didn't know anybody in LA. I didn't have any connections. Thankfully, I got a job at Parachute Home, and it was an internship. So again, like being out of college already for a year, going from a retail environment to an internship in one of the most expensive cities was something that I was nervous about, but I was very confident in the fact that the internship could turn into a full-time position. So I was at Parachute Home for about, the internship was 3 months originally, and it did get
Um,
extended. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, I want to ask you a couple questions before you keep telling
Oh
me
my
all
God.
this.
Okay, yeah.
You're doing amazing. I just have so many questions because the story you're telling me is honestly very, very incredible. And I think that you have some little golden nuggets that I want to kind of touch on a
Yeah,
little
go ahead.
bit more. Okay. So let me talk before we go into that role becoming a full-time job. I know something you had told me before our episode is that you're passionate about calculated risk taking. And this seems like a very big risk going from having a social media coordinator role to then picking your entire life up to a place you've never been, taking a title decrease to,
Yep.
for something that is not even guaranteed. So can you tell me a little bit about kind of the thought that went into that decision? Because yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
Yes. I am definitely a big believer in calculated risks, and I'm also a very positive thinker. So I always do believe that what is for me will be for me, and nobody's going to be able to take that away. So I don't want to say it was like a do or die moment for me, but after a year just working in Philly, and again, if you want to live in Philly and work in a creative industry, you have to look towards URBN. And I didn't have enough experience at that point in my life to even consider like getting an interview there or being hired. So there was so much opportunity in LA. When I was interviewing from Philly. And so with the parachute internship, it was paid, thankfully, and I did have some savings in my bank account, which allowed me to be able to take that risk. And I also have a very supportive family and friend network that I knew if for whatever happened, if I failed, I could always just come home and start again. So for me, it was definitely worth it. And when I was interviewing with Parachute, I was also looking at LinkedIn at the job history of employees who were currently working there. And a lot of them did start as interns and then they were transitioned to full time as coordinators. So I felt very confident that I could also make that transition and it would only be an internship for 3 months. So again, I think the positive outcomes kind of outweighed what I thought could be a negative.
I love how you said that you did your own due diligence going and looking at the other people that have worked there and saying that they started at interns because it's not uncommon for companies to kind of make empty promises like that too, where they'll say, yeah, you could get promoted or and then 3, 6, a year goes by and that promotion doesn't happen. So I like that you did your due diligence there. Did you also talk about that in the interview process?
I did not. Well, I did a little bit. So the hiring manager, she did mention that they were looking for somebody to come in-house after this internship. So again, it was kind of like not a sure thing, but I felt hopeful that that would happen for me and it would be worth it in the end.
And what did you feel like? Because I know you sound very secure that this, and it did work out for you. So you sounded very secure that, this was the right move for you. But how did you know that, like, or what did this internship offer you that you feel like you didn't have at your previous role at Lovely Bride so that it was really worth taking this title decrease?
Yes. So really, it was all about location for me. I knew that I could stay at Lovely, but if I, again, it was a minimum wage retail job at its heart because I was still working as a sales associate, even though I was overseeing the social. And so I knew that there was really no upward plan for growth. So when I was thinking about my next step, just being in LA, even if it wasn't parachute, even if it didn't pan out, I knew that I would not only have experience in a corporate environment for a very well-known brand. So that was experience I couldn't get at Lovely. And number two, I knew I was in an area where there are so many brands who have social media roles, who have influencer marketing roles, and that is really what I was determined to work in. Like that is, I knew I wanted to do that. So I think that is probably what made me take that decrease in position because again, it's very hard, you know, and even I felt a little bit embarrassed or ashamed to even tell people like, oh yeah, I'm moving to LA, but it's an internship. So I very purposefully didn't actually tell people it was an internship. I told them I got a job, a full-time
Fake
job.
it till you make it.
Exactly, exactly. And I told myself that, my family knows and that's all that matters. And if whatever happens, like they have my back.
It's really helpful to hear your story going through this because I think there's a lot of people that want to make the transition that you were successfully able to make. Because I know I've talked to a lot of women that are in some type of combo role like that, where they're doing retail and social, or they're not even in marketing and they're trying to switch in, and that it's okay to take that decrease to go back to the internship level because that tiny step back will make that next step that you take so much larger and in the right direction that you actually want to grow in. So I'm really glad that you shared that with us and we got to dive into that because it obviously, panned out and worked out for you. And I think a lot of people would be too scared to take that risk.
Yeah, it definitely was the catalyst for, I think, anything else that came after that parachute position. And I'm very thankful that it did pan out.
So tell me, now you can continue. So sorry for interrupting, but keep going and tell me after kind of mute sex and then what happened next.
Yes. So again, I was at Parachute for the internship was for 3 months. I didn't get hired full time actually.
Oh,
So
plot twist.
yeah, so there's a plot twist. So I was getting constant praise. The hiring manager really wanted to bring me on. And I would say my time at Parachute was huge for my growth because I was never treated like your stereotypical intern, right? Like I felt like I was a member of the team. I had autonomy to oversee the entire social calendar, copywriting for the posts. And then also, as I joined Parachute, they were kicking off the first iteration of their influencer program. So I was very heavily involved within that, which is where I discovered my love for influencer over your more traditional social media. And I got my internship extended for another 3 months because they couldn't hire me full time. And of course, at the end of the total 6 months, unfortunately, there was just no budget. And it was right before COVID. So actually, they were downsizing their staff instead of hiring on new people.
Oh,
So that was 6 months in LA. And at that point, I have enough experience to where I'm getting a lot of coordinator interviews at some really, really cool brands. And one of them worked out, which was Mute Six, thankfully. So that was, I would say it was more of a digital marketing agency. It was a huge company, whereas Parachute was a startup with around 30 employees. Mute Six had like 200 employees. So they were launching influencer marketing as a service for their clients. And I was there starting as a coordinator. eventually worked my way up to a manager and then their version of what a senior manager is very quickly within the year that I was there. I had clients spanning all different verticals. So CPG, wellness, fashion, fitness. Like, I think honestly, if there is a vertical, I've probably contracted influencers for that vertical. So it was a great position for me to learn a lot because I think in every single industry you have influencers who are going to be more beneficial for fashion or food or fitness. And you really have to identify like what content is going to outperform for that specific industry. So I had, again, just a revolving door of clients coming in, coming out, setting all of these different KPIs for them. And at an agency, it's less about quality of campaigns or content and more about quantity of how many influencers can you secure for this client because that's what they're paying you for. And for me, I am just not an agency type of girl. I really like to be in house at a brand, have these deeper personal connections with influencers, and feel very passionately and strongly about the brand that I am pitching to them. So I kind of knew that Mute Six wasn't the right fit for me. But on the other hand, I also was able to strengthen my analytical mind and that side of my brain because we worked very closely with the paid social team as well. So you get a sense of not only how can you utilize influencer marketing for awareness and content, but also how can you drive revenue via influencer content boosted through paid ads. And I think having both of those sides of the coin and like understanding performance marketing, influencer marketing, brand awareness, influencer marketing helped propel me into the next position that I had, which is Coco Kind, which I don't know if you have any questions at this point. I can keep going. Let me
Yes.
know.
Okay, so you move to Mute Six, you go to agency. I always think it's interesting hearing how there's always an agency stop on so many of the guests I talk to, and it's always like it was great experience. I love the opportunity, but a lot of them, and there's people that prefer agency too, but I do hear a lot that it's nice to be in-house or kind of be able to dedicate all of your time and energy to one brand and getting to see your efforts kind of grow there. Before we go on to your next role, I want to quickly ask, so in this agency world, getting to work in all different verticals, was there any key lessons or that you learned about influencer marketing or anything that you think our audience would be interested to hear?
I really think working at the agency was invaluable experience for me. And since Mute Six, I have not worked at another agency again, just because I don't feel like it really serves me and the work that I want to be doing. But I would never regret it because working with so many different clients, you really just have this robust knowledge of how influencer marketing works wherever you go. So if you want to have like a career pivot and maybe you're in fashion and you want to go to beauty or you want to go to tech, working at an agency where you have all these different clients at once, it really hones your skills because again, like these clients aren't like one after another. I had 10 clients at once. So whenever I was working on a campaign for a client, I kind of had to like shift my brain to solely focus on that industry. And then in the next hour to shift it again to focus on a totally different industry. So I think that is the key takeaway that I took from my industry experience is just getting a wide range of influencer marketing knowledge that you just like can't get at one single brand. And then the other half of that is again the analytical side, just learning how to work cross functionally and how influencer can actually serve a purpose for paid channels, for email, for web, because it's not just social media, right? I think influencer can be impactful for every single marketing channel if you just know how to utilize them correctly. And the agency experience really gave me that insight.
Yeah, I love hearing that, and I think your point that you made about doing an agency as a gateway to switch into different industries is such great advice. I actually had someone ask me, they were like, I feel stuck in hospitality and I want to switch to another industry. And I wish I did this episode one day earlier because then I could have given her this advice, which is to go to an agency because then you're going to try so many different types of industries. And then after that experience, then you will have diversified experience. So Love that
Or-
you touched on that. Let's go to Coco Kind.
Okay, great. So, Coco Kind, working at Coco Kind is probably one of the biggest achievements of my career because at the time that I applied, I was just feeling very stuck again in kind of like the agency hamster wheel where I was so burnt out. I knew I wanted to leave. And actually, at this time, I was living back home in Philadelphia. I was actually living back home with my mom at this time. So I hadn't even made the move back to Philly. I was at home in my hometown in PA. And the reason why is because COVID happened, my job went remote. Living in LA is expensive. So I was like, let me just move home. There's nothing happening. So again, I was stuck in that position where it's like things are still closed because of the pandemic. I need to get out of this agency job. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a remote job. And at the time, I was also dealing with a lot of just crazy skin flare ups. And I was using Coco Kind as a consumer. It was my favorite skincare brand. I love the marketing, I love the mission behind it. And in terms of influencer marketing, they were really a standout brand in my mind who I thought was doing it right, who had this very integral sense of community as part of their overall mission. And it really showed on social. And that is what I wanted to do after being at the agency and having these very interpersonal relationships with the brand itself, but not necessarily their influencers. Like it felt very detached. And so I wanted to go to a company that was all about community. So I saw the Coco Kind listing on LinkedIn. I applied. And again, I think all of my experience that I did build up at the agency in terms of analytics, performance marketing, and awareness marketing helped me 100% get that job at Coco Kind. If you're not familiar with Coco Kind, it's a sustainable skincare company, and the founder came from Wall Street to start Coco Kind, which is so just insane. And I have so much admiration for her. But because of that, she was so analytically minded, and everything at Coco Kind, every activation was so informed in data. So I used that knowledge of data from Mute 6 to get my job at Coco Kind and to show that I had those skills. Um, and the influencer program, I co-led it with another influencer marketing manager. So we divided and conquered, and that program ran so efficiently. We were doing so many things from, again, paid partnerships to I launched a very healthy and growing ambassador program full of nano and micro creators, which I have a very soft spot for because I think they are like the true reflection of a brand's consumer. And, in 2024, I think there is a lot of conversation about de-influencing and what does the state of influencer marketing look like. And Gen Z, especially growing up in such a having such a digitally native mindset, like they see through ads 100%. So working with micros and nanos, I mean, you build these very strong relationships, and it's almost like word of mouth marketing because they are so engaged with their community. Since it's a little bit smaller, they can take the time to respond to every comment or to just like be hyping each other up. So that was one of my proudest achievements, the ambassador program. And then, of course, we did experiential, we did gifting campaigns, just whatever you can think of, we did it at Coco Kind. And again, I feel like every position I've just learned so much more than the previous and like totally different aspects. And at Coco Kind, I was on the ecom team and then I moved to brand team. So again, I'm really working like both sides of those brains from like what does influencer look like from analytical success and brand awareness success.
I mean, I love the story of you personally as a consumer being passionate about a brand to then going to work for it. I know a lot of women that I talk to have some type of dream company that they want to work for. And it's really, really hard to get the job at your dream company or the job at the brand that you use and you love every day. I know you said that your analytical experience played into that, but do you have, when you were interviewing for Coco Kind, did you translate your personal experience with the brand in your interviews? And if so, how did you do that? Or what advice do you have for someone who's interviewing for a job that is a brand that they use and love on a daily basis?
Yeah, I definitely did. And I think especially because Coco Kind is such a brand that is rooted in community, like they actually listen to feedback. They're always in the comments. They even have a few products that were created fully in partnership with their community, their social media community. So they released like a tinted lip balm and they polled their community on what it should smell like, what it should taste like, if there should be tint. So they are obsessed with community, and I think it really shows. So when I was interviewing, I expressed how valuable I feel to be a part of the Coco Kind community, how I feel seen, how the products actually like work for my skin. And I also think for influencer marketing, especially if you are passionate about a brand, that just helps you connect with influencers and essentially sell it to them. Because, especially at startups, not every influencer is going to be aware of your brand, right? And you still want to have that visibility, you still want them to love it. So, if you feel strongly about that, it's only going to help you in your position. And so much of influencer marketing is relationship building centered around products. So I would honestly just be honest. If you love a brand, don't be afraid to express it. You will never get negative points for interviewing for being too passionate.
I love that. And I also love how when you were talking about how you brought up the brand in interviews, you weren't just saying, "Oh, I love your products. I buy them." You had a more deeper connection, a more personal story that you opened up, which I think also feels more authentic than just, "Yeah, I own one of your products and it sits on my shelf." So I also love that you mentioned that. You also briefly touched on de-influencing, and that's something that I've just been seeing all over social. I know influencer marketing is not going away, but I'm curious on your thoughts on this de-influencing kind of emerging trend that we're starting to see.
Yeah, I see both sides of the coin. To me, de-influencing really means that again, people who are actively on social media, which is a majority of the population, they are so used to seeing just the one and done ad where you have maybe a macro influencer. It's a very low energy video. You can tell, I mean, obviously, with the FTC guidelines, influencers are required to hashtag ad or identify an ad as something that was paid and sponsored by a brand. So, especially on platforms like TikTok, when you're scrolling on your For You page, and TikTok is so curated to your personal interests, but it's also such a creative platform where people go to just be silly and fun and authentic. When you come across an ad, it's so easy to just quickly swipe up because it does not capture your attention. And you know that it's probably not rooted in actual interest or care for that brand. Like they might not be a consumer, but they got paid to promote this. So why should I care? So that's why I feel very strongly about ambassador being a part of a core influencer marketing strategy. I still think, of course, you should activate all tiers, whether that's your VIP or macro influencers, mid tier, all the way down to micro. But you really just need to be aware of who is organically talking about your brand or who fits for me working in fashion who fits into your brand's aesthetic really seamlessly, because then it won't feel like the partnership is just, oh, they got paid and why should I care about this if they don't actually care about the product. I also do believe so strongly in word of mouth. It might not be traditional social media influencer marketing, but anybody can be an influencer. Like I can show up to work one day with a new lipstick and influence my friend to buy that as well. So I think when we think about de-influencing, influence is never going to go away. It's more about how you approach content and how you approach the influencers that you're targeting. You should be prioritizing building real relationships, and that means getting out in person, meeting them, taking them to lunch, taking them to coffee, longer term partnerships. And whenever we contract somebody for a sponsored post, I honestly like, yes, I care about the product, but I more so care about who that influencer is, what they're already talking about, and what their organic content looks like, and not how they can center the brand in a video, but how we can be kind of like secondary almost. So it feels very authentic. It doesn't feel jarring for their community to see a sponsored ad. I really love like a chatty talking to the camera. It feels very relatable. For me, that influences me to purchase. When I see somebody like super hype about a product and they're going through why they love it, like how it's changing their life or making an impact. So, again, all that to say, I don't think influence is going away. I think it's just appearing in more authentic, organic spaces. And brands should transition their strategy to accommodate that shift.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you said, now everybody's an influencer, and
Mhm.
we're even just seeing more and more creators come on rise. TikTok obviously completely changed the landscape of all of that in a way none of us could have ever predicted. And I always find it interesting seeing videos that are sponsored and ones that I scroll past versus ones that I actually engage with or and influence, despite me, seeing that it's an ad or knowing that it's a paid partnership. And it is when that story feels actually real to that influencer. And it doesn't feel like it's a script that the brand gave them. It's when it feels like it genuinely is their own experience. And so
Yeah.
I love that you touched on that as well. A little bit off topic, but it kind of popped into my head when we were talking about building relationships with influencers. I've also lately seen some influencers get backlash for getting lots and lots of PR sent to them. There's one influencer in my head. I don't know if you've seen her go viral on TikTok, but she had like, I don't know, 100 packages behind her, and she was like doing some crazy unboxing and was like mispronouncing the brand names. And I'm curious if you also have any thoughts on the fact that now certain creators that are big are just getting so big, where there's a couple influencers like that are just getting an insane amount of attention and PR sent to them. Because it's something that I'm just starting to see more of that I feel like I didn't really see maybe even before TikTok.
Yes, I definitely have seen those videos, and it is crazy to me to even just think about the amount of packages that have to be coming to their house
Yes.
daily. It can be quite overwhelming. And so for the strategy that I've had at every company, we never just blindly gift somebody a PR package because that definitely promotes over consumption, and it's just not environmentally ethical to send somebody a package when they don't even know it's coming. And a lot of brands actually do this, which was a shock to me because I've definitely seen influencer videos or just in conversations where they say, I didn't even know this brand had my address and this mailer just showed up. So it's kind of like getting your product in front of influencers at any means possible. And again, that doesn't sit completely right with me. So before we send out mailers, we gift it to usually our most loyal influencers. And so those are the influencers who are always organically posting about us, who maybe they are a micro creator and they're not, the influencers who are getting these hundreds of packages every single day, but that just means that it means a lot more to them and they're very grateful. And I'm not saying that, the macro influencer can't be grateful because there are so many that are, but I think with PR mailers, you should just always lead with intent and not go too overboard. Because again, just thinking about all of the packaging, and usually it ends up in the trash. I've heard stories of people who live in apartment complexes, and maybe there's an influencer down the hall, and every day their communal trash is just filled with these PR mailers. And that's just not, it's not very environmentally friendly, first of all. And also, you don't want to gift something to somebody if you don't think they're going to use it, because again, that just contributes to so much waste. And we do get influencers who are like, if we offer to send them a package, they're like, oh no, like I'm okay right now. And I love that they do that. So again, just leading with intent. I don't know if there's a solution because there are so many brands who do invest in influencer marketing, and a big core part of that strategy is PR mailers. And we participate in it as well. But decreasing the amount of mailers that you do send out and being very intentional and thoughtful about who you're actually gifting so that they do appreciate the product they are going to post or whatever your KPIs are. And it's not going to end up in a landfill, essentially.
I love that word intent that you're using. And I think because one of the beautiful thing with TikTok is that any video can go viral, which is amazing. And I think sometimes it's almost like the lottery of like, okay, we're gonna send out all of these PR packages and we're just gonna hope like just one of them goes viral. And then, sometimes that's all a brand really needs
Yeah.
to, be able to sell a huge quantity of their product. So, and also the waste thing is huge too. I think brands have gotten a lot better at this, but I remember in the early years, I saw influencers be like, this is just the packaging is beautiful, but like this packaging is over the top. Like this
Yeah.
is just so much that I'm gonna have to throw away, even though it looks gorgeous. It's not sustainable. So it's also really interesting, or I think it's fun to see when brands are also being, like you said, intentional, sustainable, and kind of approaching their influencer marketing in a different way than just trying to send it out to anybody and anybody, or everybody and anybody will open the package.
Agree.
Okay, Taylor, let's keep going. We got one more role till we get to your Urban Outfitters job. So tell me about your transition from Cocoa Kind to Pepper.
Yes. Okay. So I was at Coco Kind for a little bit under 2 years, and I have nothing but amazing things to say. At the time of my transition, I felt that I was kind of hitting a plateau. I wasn't really being challenged anymore. Things were running smoothly, and I wanted more responsibility and actually shaping the way an influencer program looks and feels for a smaller brand. And so when I was kind of at that stage in my career, in my tenure at Coco Kind, I wasn't actively looking for other jobs, but the hiring manager at Pepper, who then became my manager, she slid into my LinkedIn DMs and she asked if I was open to new positions as Pepper was really looking to scale their influencer program. And if you don't know Pepper, they were an intimates brand. They are still an intimates brand, but now they have expanded into loungewear, athleisure, swim. So they're more so a lifestyle brand, and they specifically cater to women with chest sizes of double A to B. So a very underserved market that, again, I very strongly believed in their mission. And something that I've been so fortunate is pretty much all of the startups that I've worked at have been female founded, and Coco Kind and Pepper were both women of color founded. And again, that's something that's very important to me. So it was kind of a no brainer. I was given the opportunity to, again, completely redefine what their influencer program looked like, build efficiencies. I had an intern that I was also overseeing, and I was leading their affiliate program, which they were dubbing an ambassador program, but it was more so affiliate, which I also did manage at Coco Kind. So there were a lot of synergies between that role and my position at Coco Kind. But since I was building a program from the ground up, I wanted to take on that responsibility. So I did make the transition. I was there for 9 months, which is probably the least amount of time I spent at a job. And I loved the company. I loved how much work-life balance I had. I loved the team. But I did discover at Pepper that there weren't enough resources to really scale the program in the way that I had expected. And I was doing a lot of, I would say, like, I was kind of the middleman between the social channel and the paid social channel. So we weren't doing a lot of sponsored posts like I was used to. We weren't doing a lot of gifting at scale, like, again, I was used to at Coco Kind, which was a much larger program. We were doing a lot of UGC, so contracting creators for content to post on social media or contracting creators for content that will be boosted as an ad. So there wasn't a lot of creativity in that position. And while I did build a lot of organizational processes, it just wasn't for me at that time of my career. Again, I wanted a lot more responsibility and ownership of a program. And I wanted to fully scale an influencer program that encompassed not only paid, but gifting and events and ambassador. And how I really think influencer marketing excels is when all of the cogs in the machine are running at once. And Pepper just wasn't able to give me that at that time.
Okay, so interesting that you were able to identify that by yourself and say, okay, this isn't the opportunity that I wanted or that I thought that it would be. And so you made the decision to then switch over to Urban Outfitters, which is where you are now. So tell me a little bit about kind of what your role looks like there.
Yes. So working at Urban Outfitters is a dream come true and also a very full circle moment because from the pandemic, when my job at Mute Six agency went remote, Coco Kind was remote, and Pepper was remote. So I did eventually move back to Philadelphia. And as I had mentioned previously, if you are living in Philadelphia and you want to work for a large brand or in a creative industry, you're going to work at one of the urban brands. So I saw the position on LinkedIn and I just told myself, you're going to get this position. Like I did not let myself have any doubts or any negative thinking because for me, it was just the total perfect opportunity. It was a step up in seniority. So before my position at Urban, I was always just a manager. So this was a senior manager position. I would also be able to have a full-time direct report under me. So potential to grow a larger team and continue to build out that team. And it was a very similar situation when I was interviewing at Pepper, where the urban team was really like, hey, we don't have a full functioning influencer team. We're really looking for this person to come up and scale. But how they wanted the position to scale was exactly aligned with how I wanted to scale a position. So, encompassing again, mailers, gifting, PR, working very closely with social for UGC and paid ads, experiential, and of course, I mean, Urban is a heritage brand at this point. It's been around for so long. It has so much brand awareness, and it's such a cool brand that you can really tap into and work with so many different creative individuals. And that's all the way from VIP to celebrity, all the way down to, your campus reps and nano creators and ambassadors. So it was everything that I was looking for at the time. And again, I did do my due diligence. So I didn't enter a position where there were false promises and I wasn't feeling fulfilled or I didn't have the resources to scale in the way that I expected. So I looked at what was going on with the Free People and Anthropology influencer programs and what they were accomplishing. And of course, they are separate brands, they're all under the Urban umbrella. But Free People and Anthropology, they were doing everything I wanted to do with an influencer program. So I felt confident that I'd be able to do that at Urban as well, since they're all so similar and they're under the same parent company.
Well, amazing that you're able to end up finding the exact opportunity that I know you were looking for. And I also think your story is interesting because it didn't happen right away. It took a couple mistakes until you were able to find the right fit where you were able to align what you're passionate about with the brand that was kind of, you know, I don't know if the term is willing to partner or just working together to kind of bring that vision to life, which I love. And I also am curious if because I know for Urban Outfitters you were in fashion and then you were in I think you said Pepper was more like women's wear.
Yep.
And then you were in beauty and you did agency and you did home. So you kind of span all the different industries. For again, I'm going back to I know a lot of women want to work in fashion marketing, let's say. Do you find that the industries are pretty transfer the skills that you're building are transferable that someone that is working in maybe tech can then go to beauty and then go to fashion?
I definitely think so. Because the strategy really remains the same. I think the biggest thing that changes is the types of influencers that you are going to be contracting or inviting to be part of your community. And then also the types of content that's going to resonate for your specific vertical. So the content that's resonating for a fashion creator is probably not going to be the same content that resonates for somebody who mainly creates content surrounding beauty and skincare or tech is going to look completely different. So I really think it's just being comfortable in whatever industry you're applying for a position in. If you are looking to make a pivot, definitely do your research, see who are the top influencers in this niche. What is the type of content they're creating so that when you are interviewing, you can go to the hiring manager and say, look, I understand the ins and outs of this industry. I have the strategic experience to run a very successful influencer program. And this is who I'm going to target. And this is the type of content that I think is going to hit KPIs, whether that is performance marketing based, awareness, sales. Influencer can be top of the funnel, it can be bottom of the funnel. It really just depends on the goals of that specific job. But I think if you know who you're going to be targeting, that's like the biggest step you can take, because the strategy, again, it really should remain the same.
I think that's great advice, especially for someone who wants to be in this influencer space or switch industries, of doing that research before you go into the interview. And so that way you can sound more confident in the advice or in answering your questions and being a good fit for that role.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, Taylor, this time flew by so fast. I feel like I could keep asking you more questions because this is such a cool space and you have so much experience in it. But my last question that I'll end today with is, do you have any advice for someone that is looking to have a career path like yours or looking to work in influencer or fashion marketing that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I always recommend starting out at a startup that you feel very passionately about if you have the opportunity, because much like an agency, you are learning so much and you're given so much responsibility, and you feel a lot more connected to the brand because you're interacting so closely with not only cross-functional teams, but also the founder and CEO. And I think that is really invaluable experience because startups, they are trying to become these big legacy brands. So everything they're doing is so data informed, and it really hones your strategic skill set and mindset. And I think that's applicable to any industry, but influencer marketing especially. I think once you have experience marketing a product that, again, is not very well known to influencers, you start to figure out all of these little tricks to, like, how do I make this more appealing, or how can I really build up this community and make a huge impact. I think all of the startup experience I had has really prepared me to take this role at a much larger company. And I also think sometimes larger companies are a little bit less creative. There's a little bit less flexibility sometimes because there are so many people working for the brand. There's so much red tape. And startups are really just like the best of all worlds when you're thinking of how do I jump into influencer marketing and actually make a difference and actually get my creative ideas into motion and get like immediate sign off. So I think that would be like my biggest takeaway. And then always just be learning and never stop thinking about what can I take from my previous position that will apply to my next one. I think any experience is a great learning experience. And for me, like you mentioned, I did home, I did beauty, I did fashion. And now at Urban is of course a fashion brand, but it's also lifestyle because they sell home and they sell beauty. And so it's kind of like all of my experience combined into one. So yeah, just never take any experience for granted because you can always apply it to something else.
That is amazing advice. Thank you so much, Taylor, for sharing some behind the scenes look at your marketing career and your experience in influencer marketing. This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you again for coming on the Sky Society podcast.
Of course, I had so much fun. Thank you for having me again.